All right. Okay, welcome everyone to the stream. Just gonna make sure everything's looking okay. Make sure things are set up. Good. If you're just joining us, say hi. Great. Sorry, I was having some troubles with the stream, getting some things set up. Trying to figure out the live events stuff. So, yeah, I was having some issues there. Sorry, we're still getting a little set up. I was running late from work. So right now I'm just setting up our project, the way what we're going to be doing, and say hello if you're joining. We'd love to know who's here. So we have some people from YouTube joining in. So today we're going to be talking about Redshift C4D. We're going to be talking about displacement, and we're going to be talking about AOVS or multipasses and setting some of that good stuff up. So if you have questions, feel free to jump in. But today I'm just going to kind of get started. We're going to jump in pretty quick so I don't waste too much time. All right. So first things I like to do is I'm just going to set up some basic environment stuff with the dome. Oh, there's a crash course. There's some of the stuff in there. And let's find an HDRI that we can use. Who do we have on so far? I'd love to see who's tuning in. Let's see, I'm going blind, guys. Okay, let's just throw in. Oh, I don't like that one. These are previews. We'll just do one of these HDR studios. Okay, I'm going to just set up an IPR. And there we go. Okay, so we're going to be talking about doing some displacements. And doing displacements is something that's pretty easy, but when I first was learning Redshift, I was really confused as to how to do it. And there's a couple little steps you need to keep in mind. So basically, it needs a material. Every object needs a material with displacement. And it needs the object tag, the Redshift object tag on it. And we need to turn displacement on. So let's do that. Let's create a material. I'm just going to throw a basic one on here. So we have our material. And let's just throw a displacement in. I like to use the graph editor personally. And in the or the node editor. And here you can search for things really quickly. So let's type displacement. And there we go. So where you need to plug it in is not here on the RS material. In here, this is where you do your bump. This is where you do normal maps. But displacement goes in right here on the material, not the RS material. So you want to make sure you take this from the out and you plug it into this blue area and go to displacement. Now we just need to tell it what to displace. So let's type in texture. And in here, let's locate a good texture to use. And I have some textures that we can use from Megascans. Let me find some of those. Let's go right. Materials, and we will do basic materials, construction. There we go. And we have this height, so we'll use this one. So bring that in, plug this into our texture map, and see, so far it's doing nothing. And I remember when I first started learning this, I was way frustrated and I could not figure out for the life of me. I was cranking up the scale and everything, and it was not working. So that's because we need to add on this object. Oops, I don't know if you guys can see. Let me see if I can move my windows over for you a little bit better. Getting cut off. Okay, so that's because we need to add a tag, and we need to go to Redshift object tag. Let me bring that over. And in here, we need to go to geometry, and we need to turn that on and turn on displacement. And we can already tell that it's doing something, so it is working. Let me throw a light in. Oh, you can start seeing it right there. See, it's starting to warp it. Now you have your displacement scale. So if we turn that to 5, we're going to start seeing more of it. 10. Now we're starting to see our displacement. Maximum displacement. I think this adds a little bit more of the height. Let's see. Maybe this says where it's maxed out at. So there we go. But now you're getting some of that crazy stepping stuff. And I believe if you turn on, nope, let's turn off smooth subdivision. You have to be careful sometimes displacements because it can break pretty easily. Trying to figure out which one. It's interesting. It almost acts like a bump in some ways, but let's make sure that this is all set up correctly in here as well. Height fields, vectors. This is not a vector. Oh, there we go. That's looking a little bit better. So if we had that up to 10 as well, there we go. Now we're starting to get some of that displacement that we want. So displacement in here is like that. Let's see if I turn that to 1, 2. So yeah, that was one question someone had, was on displacement, on how to throw those in there. Then what you could also do is add a normal map on this, since we have that. So let's do that. Normal maps are a little bit different. Bump maps, you need to bring in a texture and plug that texture into bump and then into the bump input. Whereas normal maps, you need to just go normal map, drag it, plug it in, overall, and then bump input. And then in here, we just locate our normal map. So we have this cracked normal map. And there we go, it looks like that's on. So now I have this cool concrete stuff. Let me throw a light in here so you guys can see this a little bit better. And I'll crank that up. So there we go. We have a normal map and we have a displacement on this little road, this patch of concrete. Let me know if you have any questions so far, or if I'm going too fast and I'm not explaining things. I'm still learning a lot myself, but I think this is really fun to kind of show some things that we can do in here. So yeah, there we go. There's that. And we could add in our like roughness on the concrete as well. So let's do that. Let's type in texture. And let's bring in, we have a gloss. And we just grab this and we plug it in. Maybe that's just the reflection weight. Nope. That broke it. Let's try it again. Looks like we broke roughness. That did some interesting things. There we go. Maybe I had to just refresh it. And now we can bring in we can actually bring in more of the textures that we have set up. Let me just scale this thing. There we go. I don't really like this node workflow in here as much as Octane's like node setup. I know I shouldn't say that out loud, but it's true. This node setup in here, it uses is the Cinema 4D one, and I don't really like it that much. Okay. And let's drag this and plug it into our diffuse. Let's refresh that. Looks like it doesn't like that. There we go. I'm going to turn down my weight of my reflections. And now we want to I want to break this thing. We're going to push the normal map and see, let's just start cranking things up and down and seeing what they do. There we go. Now we have more of that displacement in the maximum displacement setup. Looks more accurate. That's cool. So now we have some shadows falling off. What if I did 50? There's a more extreme example. And displacement scale. I'm going to go back to 1 and see what that did. So it looks like it does minimal. And we go 5. So these kind of work in tangent with your displacement. These two. It's like this is like the height or how like tall it is, and this is like how much. It's very interesting. And I'm going to open up the normal map and see what else we can do in that one. See if we changed it. Unbiased normals. If someone could explain me unbiased normals, I would really appreciate it. I still actually don't understand unbiased normals or flip Y. Is that just flipping the direction of whether it's in or out? That's what I'm guessing. And then you kind of got to see which one looks better. So there's flipped. Let me turn that off. Yeah, I don't know which one looks better. I almost thought this one did, but I could be wrong. So we could crank up our normals as well to get some of that smaller detail. We're just going to go crazy a little bit. You'll start seeing things fall apart, like you'll get tearing if you crank up your normals. You will get some crazy tearing, so you got to be careful of that. But so that's basically it for displacements. Displacement's one of those things where you just got to make sure you're setting up your object with the Redshift tag, turning geometry override on, displacement on, and then messing with the maximum and displacement scale so that you can make that look correct. So there's that. And then in the texture, you need to make sure that you are first getting a displacement. Goodness gracious, right here. A displacement tag plugged into the material over here, and then a texture into the displacement tag. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Again, if you guys are just joining, say hello. We're talking about Redshift C4D displacement. And if you guys have questions in Redshift, I'm willing to kind of stop some things and just talk about that. But I do know someone wanted to know about sculpting. So we can jump over into sculpting in Cinema 4D and how we bake that out and use that as a displacement. So, and Cinema 4D has some pretty cool sculpting tools. And if you do need to bake it out, you can, or you can just leave them in here, and you can see your sculpt in Redshift just fine. Let me change my layout to the sculpt. Okay. Let me make sure this is editable. We'll subdivide it. And yeah, they have these cool. Let me just change the scale of that. Let's see, control. So yeah, there you go. You can sculpt right in Cinema 4D. Has some cool stuff you can use. We're just gonna do something really quick. I don't know what this is. Say hello if you're hanging out. I'd love to know who's here. And they have some cool tools in here. I don't know if any of you have messed with any of this stuff, but they have some fun things you can do. So anyway, I'm gonna grab a, let's see. I know there's some, let's see if we can load like this kind of stuff. That didn't look very good. Let's load cracks. Looks like it's not registering it there. Maybe I need to subdivide this a bit more. Marty, what up? You can only sculpt butts. That's awesome. So yeah, in here Redshift will understand the sculpts that you create. So if you don't need to render it, if you don't need to bake out the displacements, you don't have to. You could just do it all in here, which is kind of handy. There you go. I don't know what that is. It's like some chewed up gum that someone turned into a cube. So yeah, it understands it in here. But if you need to bake it out, we can show you how to do that. So you just go down to here and you hit Bake Object. And we choose like the size of our texture. Choose a path. And actually, maybe that was the best place to put it, is my Redshift folder. Let's call this sculpt. We'll go in here and we'll just sculpt 1. And then we need to choose what we want. So you can choose displacement, normal maps, ambient occlusion, and I usually leave this off. And we can say our source is with a high res, so you want your highest res, so you can, the more you subdivide it, the more you have, the more levels you have, and then you want to, the target is the lowest res. So we want to have the lowest res object, but we want to have the highest res displacement. So we do that really quick. Marty says the Redshift looks awesome. Yes, I still use Octane. But I've been switching over to Redshift because Redshift is very good. I've said this before in the other streams. Redshift is amazing for volumes. It's amazing for large scenes. So you have a lot of stuff going on. Anytime I've tried to do massive scenes, Octane has kind of failed, and it doesn't know what to do with like high poly stuff and a lot of objects. Maybe my Octane was broken, but for me, I kept having so many issues. So I switched to Redshift, and I have not been disappointed. It's super fast, and it does very, very clean renders. That was another problem I had with Octane. I kept getting a lot of like noise and fireflies, whereas this isn't as bad. So anyway, that's my reasons. We can discuss, why we like either one, and I would love to hear reasons for both. But I also, on a project today, use Octane, but I am using it more for previs, and I'm showing people, a client, some animatics, and so we just rendered out in Octane because it's really fast, and I can do like blooming, and so I don't really need to take it into post and do anything. I'm like, oh, here's the animation, and they love that. So anyway, back to baking sculpture. You can preview it right here, and I'm just gonna bake it and see what happens, and then we're gonna bring it into our project. So did some weird shenanigans, so hopefully we did it right. If we didn't, we'll see what happens. I'm gonna maybe bake out another version just to see if we're doing this right. Cubic. Oops. Oh, it's still baking. While it's baking, Marty says, "What do you think about Unreal Engine 4?" Unreal Engine. Yeah, Unreal is getting unreal. Yeah, Unreal Engine does some crazy good looking stuff, and sometimes I wonder if that's where it's gonna move, where everything's gonna go. Is to just like game engines, because they're getting really good. I know V-Ray just announced they're gonna be working with Unreal, which is super cool. So you can use V-Ray in there. Really quick, I'm gonna check out what these different types look like. And let me see what this preview. Oh, that's actually looking better. Maybe I had to do the top level. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna rebake this because I think this is actually more accurate. It looks like it unwrapped it properly. So we're gonna try this one. Those of you who don't know Marty in the chat, he's a super talented guy. You guys should go. We should pull up his stuff actually. He's super talented. Marty, post a link to your stuff in the chat. I'm sure people would love to see your work. Super talented. He does like the most amazing like X Particles Octane stuff. So killer work. We worked together on like Breaking Benjamin. Was that like a year ago or something? It was good times on a music video. So it was fun. This is almost done baking, and I think this is going to be the better looking one. We will see. Okay, I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna go back to our startup. Startup user. Let me hide that one. This looks like it's the more accurate one. Let me see how many. Let's turn on our. So it looks like I exported out pretty good model. IPR window. Oh, I think we have this thing on too. Oh, there we go. Nice. So I had our sculpt on, and this is our old one, which did not look right. But here's our new one. And I think it did our all of our layers correct on this one. So we could convert this over to, let's try to convert this over to a Redshift material very quickly. Let's, should have just dragged this thing down. I keep getting confused by all the icons. So let's grab another material. I'm going to put this on our rock thingy. And then we're going to copy. I'm not going to use the diffusion. I don't really care about the reflectance. I'm going to just copy our normals and our displacement. And I'm going to go in here and just copy the path. And back in here, I'm going to do a texture. Paste that in here. And then displacement. Plug this into our displacement. Plug that in right here. Texture map. And then we need to make sure that the sphere has our, oh man, this thing's going off the screen. Sorry guys, just really quick, I gotta do this way. Oh boy. There we go, you're starting to see some of that come through right there. So now we have our displacement that we sculpted. And let me just see if that's crank this thing up. starting to get some of that coming through that we sculpted. The sculpt we did wasn't too crazy. Let me make sure that subdivision's off. And then we also need to put in our normal map. So we can go back in here. Let me copy this. Copy. And we're going to go in here and do a normal map. We're going to plug this into our bump and path. Did some funky stuff though. Looks like it got baked out a little odd. So I may have made some mistakes in my baking. But like I said, you could just even use the, let me turn that off. You could just even use the sculpt that you did in here if you wanted. So they're pretty comparable. I think I would have to fix a couple of things. Mostly my normal map got messed up. So it looks like the baking got weird on that. So I just unplugged that. But the displacement worked, which is sweet. So there's some of the stuff with sculpting in C4D. Redshift. There we go. And our displacement's working really well. Yeah, Marty, we got to do another project together. Those are good times. So next, some of the things that people wanted to see was AOVs. And guys, if you have questions, feel free to, tune in or ask some questions. Love to hear what you guys want to see. So I'm just going to throw in, maybe we'll do a cube for this demonstration. We're just going to have this cube hanging out here. And I'm going to, we're going to put some basic textures on here, and then we're going to render out the passes. How do we set up the render passes? I should have got up the manual from Redshift. I was looking at it today, and that explains a lot of really handy stuff with the AOVs. Cool, so just gonna throw a texture on there. Let me just grab some more lights. Lock this view, and let's move this over. Let's bring that up. A couple things I like to do is put the round corners on. We could just fill it though, like in here, the actual object. We'll do 2. There you go. Nice soft edges. And Marty, I don't do any animation. Nope. We have other people do animation. I'm more like lighting, rendering, compositing, but 90% of what I do is compositing. So let's just do a texture in here. We're just gonna put in a roughness. Let me find a good rough texture. Any of these will do. I'm just gonna grab a random one. So you can see that update. And there we go. We have this like rough texture. Fantastic. And I could try doing a layer, color layer on this. There's my wife. And we just plug this into diffusion color. Then I'm gonna do a, let's see, color. Let's maybe we should grab one of these colors we can plug in just for demonstration purposes. So our base color is going to be blue. Come on now. Oh, interesting. Maybe we have to do it in here. There we go. Blue. We'll just do it in there. And then we're going to enable secondary color. And we'll do like a red. And now we need to blend these two. So we can do a curvature. We've talked about this before. And basically we want to have a mask. I think it's mask 1. Let me go to convex. Or is it mask 2? Maybe it's mask 2. Yes, it is. So you can see the radius of that. Let me try this other one. Let's go back to convex. Sorry, guys. And we can make, here's our hard edges that we can do like right there. The mask setup in this is actually kind of interesting because it doesn't work with the way my brain thinks. I constantly am like, wait, no, I want to put a mask on a certain layer, but I don't know, it does some weird stuff. I'm curious though, if I did switch these, what would happen? See, it doesn't do anything. Maybe it's because our base color is black. What if I did this as green? Or let's see, green. Yeah, see, it doesn't even do anything. So it's weird, our base color doesn't work. So anyway, that's if you want to ever do, this is like if you want to do those roughen edges. Oh, does Redshift have a way to exclude certain things? Yes. Marty, I'm actually going to show you that. Thank you for asking questions. Guys, I encourage questions, so if you guys have questions, please ask. So that's one of the cool things is I was doing this the other day and and on another stream and I swear it did it. So let's just take this point light. Let's crank it up. Why is that light not showing? Let's just go back to an area. Areas are the best. They just make the most sense to me. And we'll rotate this. I'm gonna just do a really extreme example. Okay, so there's our area light, and if you go into project, you want to exclude an object. Let's say we're like, hey, we don't want the cube to be hit by that light. Nope, it's not hit. And the light you're seeing down here at the very bottom, that is not from this light. That is from the reflection of the ground. So don't get confused and say, oh, this isn't working, because it is. If I take this object out, it is going to exclude it. So let me just do another cube. So if I wanted both of these objects, oops, which one did I just exclude? So that area light, if I want to exclude that, oops, goodness gracious, this one cube. So now this one on the bottom's excluded, but you can't tell. And then I want to exclude this other one too. It just need to update. This bottom cube, like I said, is not being lit by that light. It is being lit from the ground that's super bright. So if I turned the light down, you can see that the only illumination that cube is getting is from when the light hits the ground, it reflects it back up. So it's just seeing the reflection of the light, but it's not being directly hit by it. So super helpful. That's one thing, yes, that Octane users don't have, is the being able to use light linking is what they call it. So really, really handy. No, Marty, keep talking. I want some more. I love the interaction, so it's great. And let me just turn down this light because it's ridiculous. And let's set up a multipass or AOV, and we'll show you how to do that. I don't know if I showed you guys this in the other video, but I'm going to show you anyway because this is something that I really like. In the render view window, we talked a little bit about this. So Octane users love that their camera has the different like imagers, like you can change it to linear or all these presets, and you can pretty much do the same thing in here, but you need to have the LUTs yourself. So for example, I can go in here, you can choose a LUT or ACES configuration, and we can go in here and do ACES 1.3. So now we're looking at this in ACES color space. So Marty, this isn't my full-time job. No, I work at the Void, and I am a VFX artist at the Void, and we do virtual reality stuff, which is way freaking awesome. We basically put geometry where things are in real, like we create stages and we have like objects on those stages where our geometry lines up so you can feel and touch everything in VR. So that is my full-time gig as VFX artist at the Void, which I love. It's awesome. We just partnered with Disney and we're working on a Star Wars thingy, which is so fun. Anyway, back to this. So in here, in this render view is really cool because you can look at your red, green, blue, and your alpha. You also can, let's stop this render, and we can set up our AOVs. So AOVs are multipasses. So first thing you need to do is enable it. Then you need to say it's a multi-part EXR. So it uses this as our output. So you want to make sure this is checked on, and you do multi-layer file EXR. And let's choose a destination for this. Let's go into our Redshift, and I'm just going to put in the sculpt folder, and we'll just call it render 1. That is not how you spell render, but that's okay. And I'm going to name this Redshift. And in our multipasses in here, you first need to enable it. Then what you need to do is tell it how many AOVs you want. So you want to just turn this up, and you can start adding more and more of these. And you have all these different ones you can add. So I'm going to do we'll just do reflections. And then you make sure you have to enable the output of it. So you want it at 32-bit. And, or actually maybe we don't need to enable this. Maybe that already does that automatically. We'll do a little test. And we want our diffuse lighting. It says no output, which is very interesting. 32-bit. So yeah, maybe you do have to enable that. So make sure you go in here and enable it. And let's change this one to, I don't even know, we could do, we don't really have subsurface scattering, but we could do like spec reflections. You can do shadows, specular. Let's just do that. Let's just do 3 of these. 32-bit. And there we go. So now we have that set up. Something else I learned is I think this is how you get rid of hot pixels, is the clamping, because sometimes you get lots of noise. And or no, this disables important bias optimizations. That gets rid of a lot of the noise, and this is like your fireflies. So if you ever want that, you can turn those on so that your renders aren't as noisy. And I believe once you have that set up, if you want to render it out through here, you can, especially if you have like a LUT or whatever, you can hit render and it'll do it that way. But if you do it through this window, you have to make sure you're setting up your output through here. So otherwise, this is the other one. So this would be, this is where it will go if you do it through here. So let's just render this out really quickly. Just we'll make sure this is one frame. Oh, but that would have been bad. Current frame. And we will hit render just to make sure this is working. Yep, we got our, if you go to your layers, you can see which ones you have set up. So we have specular, diffuse, reflections, and it always shoots out an alpha. And I didn't turn the alpha on, or I think because our dome didn't have it on. Let me actually do that really quickly. Let me stop this. So in here, if I look at my alpha, it's completely white. If you go to the dome, you want to make sure that the alpha is on so that now you are not rendering out that. Let's make sure we have, yep, straight alpha's on. Great. All right, let's try this again. When did I start doing VFX? I started doing VFX as a kid, and you guys are all gonna laugh because all of you guys are pros. But when I was in elementary, we had the first iMovie that came out, and I literally would export every single frame out of iMovie, export every frame out, bring it into Photoshop, and I would paint frame by frame lightsabers or whatever effects I thought were cool, hand paint, and then import that back into, and I didn't know what image sequences were, so I was lining up images side by side in iMovie, and I don't know how I actually did that. So when I play back effects, it was literally every frame was just like an image, and I thought it was so cool. And then I found out about After Effects, and I got After Effects. Well, I had this other program called Alum DV from FX Home, and then I got After Effects, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can do animation over my video. And I learned After Effects, and then I learned about Cinema 4D in like high school, started learning about it. We had a class that had a C4D license, which I thought was sweet. And so I learned some C4D stuff in there, yeah. So here we go. I was going to show you guys. So here's all our passes: specular, diffuse lighting, reflections, and our alpha. And there's our image. So I can open up Premiere really quickly and show you how to do the multipass, bring them together. Yeah, so I made a video when I was a kid that took us 2 years. It was an action film. 2 years of every Saturday filming some crappy effects and or filming and then adding in those effects. Yeah, so I was dedicated from a young age to try to make stuff, and then it turned into me just practicing on my own, and then it turned into someone said, hey, we think you have a lot of potential, we'd love to hire you. So I got hired as motion graphics artist first, and then I started saying I really like VFX more than motion graphics. So that's kind of how I began. I'd love to hear your guys' story. Marty, it'd be fun to hear you tell your stories. We should actually do like a live stream together. It'd be fun. So now I'm gonna just import that. So here is open EXR. I think we just, it's not a sequence though. And I know there's a way think there's a plugin you have to have. I'm used to, I haven't been in here for a little bit because I usually stick in Nuke, and I can show you how to do this in Nuke. But there is a way to split this EXR up. Let me see really quickly. Oh yeah, I think it's in File, Scripts. Oh, create. There it is. Create Pro EXR. There we go. Okay. So this, let me solo each of these. That's our beauty, it looks like. And so what you need to do with your, it depends on what multipass you are working with, but basically, for the most part, you just want to be like, okay, this, we need to screen it. This is our alpha. We don't need the alpha. We need to screen our reflections and specular on top of our diffuse. And there we go. It's a little bit darker than this one. Or maybe we need to plus it. Let's add. No. It could just be the color space we're in, which is why it's having a hard time. But basically just screen this on top of your diffusion, and that's what you want to do. There are other materials that need different treatment. So just keep that in mind. And our alpha we don't really need. So here's our alpha, but you don't really need that unless you're using masks. And it looks like our diffuse. Let me see the diffuse. It looks, yeah, the diffusion one looks really dark. It could be, we need to make sure this is set up to the right color space. 32-bit. No. Let me check the, so that's our contact sheet. Oh, that's cool. It spits out a contact sheet for you, so you can see all your passes right there. This is our beauty. And if you turn all these on, then what you can do, the advantage of doing stuff like this is you have control of, you know, each layers, like how reflective stuff is. And you can kind of mess around with all of this. We could get it back, you know, this looks like the reflections are a little bit hotter in this one, so, you know, I could just throw another levels on my specular lighting, bring that up, and then you just kind of want to mess with it and get it where, yeah, I actually think our multipass one looks a little bit cooler. Looks like we're, yeah, we have some things you could mess around with in here. Maybe the reflections are a bit brighter. Let's see. So a lot of this is just playing around with this kind of stuff until you get it where you want. Oh, there it is. Oh wow, so we got that actually really close. That was me just messing. So that's on and off from our beauty to that. Yep, and so that's screening. The last thing I was going to show you guys in AOVs is, let's see if I can bring up the, I'm going to see if I can bring up the Redshift manual. And talk about AOVs, because there are some objects that 100% need, they need to be like multiplied and stuff. So you can see in here, it's saying, okay, all of these can be plus. Diffuse lighting, global illumination, subsurface scattering, those are plus. But when you see diffuse filter, that's multiplied in. And there is also an order of operations, and that's the other thing too. So you need to make sure that you are setting this up properly. For example, right here we have reflections filters, so it looks like filters need to be multiplied on beneath our reflections that are raw. So if you have those types of things, your filters and your raws, they need to be multiplied together. Yeah, so there is an order of operations. So if I had a diffuse raw and a diffuse filter, those need to be multiplied and then plus on top of everything else. That's at least in Nuke. So I don't know if we have any Nuke users, but so yeah, that's how you do that. Love to answer any more questions if there are any more questions. If not, I always like to just show you guys, you're more than welcome to check out my, oh, that's not the right thing, VFX Central. So yeah, VFX Central, if you sign up, I can notify you when I have my crash course coming out, which is coming along really, really well. It is Octane, it's not Redshift. We're doing Octane for this course, and I take you through pre-production, production, and post-production. I've worked in all fields there, and also we have some fun products. If you guys ever want to check out my website, these things help. I always add flares over because who doesn't love flares? And we have these anomaly, anamorphic flares. We have explosions, and some other fun stuff. And I give away a bunch of free samples if you sign up on our email list. And my Vimeo, because I had someone ask about my Vimeo page. If you want to see some of my work, you can check that out here at vimeo.com/AaronsBot. And yeah, a lot of the stuff I create, this vision video I did all 90% just myself. I had a couple little shots that had some help, but yeah. So all this stuff is matte paintings and all that fun compositing. This is a projection. So later we can do some live streams talking about that. So check that out, Aaron's Bot. And I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. Just type in VFX Central Insta, or go find us at I don't know where my Instagram is. Anyway, yeah. Awesome. Marty uses the anomaly pack all the time. Sweet. Yeah, I use it. I still use that pack, and it's been out a while. I use it almost on every project somewhere. So yeah. You can follow me on Instagram. I'd love to follow you guys back. So just come hang out. I'm trying to find, maybe it's just, that's sad. I don't even know where I know why. I think it's VFX. It's like Instagram, Instagram, _. Yep. VFX _Central. Here we go. Okay, yeah, go follow me, VFX Central. Go follow me, and I'll follow you guys back. Check out some of your work. And yeah, let me know if you guys have more questions. Shoot me email or comments, whatever, and it'll be awesome. I can show you if you guys want before I leave something I'm working on. I showed a little bit of it last time. Let me just kick open Nuke. This is a really fun project I'm doing with Redshift, and I've learned a ton about like rendering and Redshift, getting rid of noise and stuff, and doing the multipass renders. So yes, hi Mara TV, awesome. Wish you were here earlier. We're about to end things, but it's non-commercial. Yeah, leave some comments, guys. And I'd love to just get feedback and let me know what things you want to learn. I'd love to just kind of share all the knowledge that I have. So I have no real secrets. I just like to give them all away. It's just loading all my multipasses. Okay, yeah. So here is something I've been working on. It's not done yet. I still need to. I'm gonna take this ship into Substance and paint it up a bit more. But yeah, this is what the render looked like, and I had a couple other renders, so I'm still determining which one I like the best. And this one had a lot more reflective leaves, which I really liked. And yeah, this is actually an animation, so I did a fluid sim of these jet engines, and they blow all over, and it looks cool. So yeah, this is Redshift, and it turned out really clean out in these areas. The only spot I had problems is right here, and I think it's from this EIS light I need to fix and turn up the samples. But yeah, this isn't the final shot, but it's coming together pretty well. So yes, this is just a personal project, Marty, that I'm working on and having fun. I'm gonna add a guy on top, like welding something, and maybe some guys like over here sitting on like on a log and like just kind of taking a break. The camera's like looking down and pans up. If you want, I can pull that up really quickly and show you what that looks like. See if it'll. There's a lot going on. Let me close all this. Okay. Have this on low. Let me see if I can turn off. We'll see if this will play back. It may not. So the camera's going to be flying over the ground. And it pans up to reveal this huge spaceship. And that's the fun thing is all these fluids, that's a VDB sequence I created in Houdini and brought it into Cinema 4D with Redshift. And this is a ton of geo. And oh yeah, and all the geometry is moving. Like all these leaves are moving, all the plants are blowing. You have the volumes blowing out of the engines. So there's a lot going on in this scene, and Redshift can handle this no problem. So I'm obviously kind of a fanboy of Redshift, but yeah, pretty cool. Those VDB files were pretty awesome. They looked really nice. And let me see if I can pull up the IPR window. Hopefully it won't crash. Usually it's been pretty good. Oh wait, I gotta make sure that it is enabled. Oh yes, okay, good. It's gonna take a little second to load in all the stuff, but I'm very impressed with this. One frame in this did take about I think it took like 20 minutes or 30 or something. I'm still learning how to cut it down. It could be my samples are way too high. There's a couple of reasons. Actually change it back over to sRGB for your viewing pleasure. So yeah, it'll refine. This is progressive renderer. It'll refine, and there's no, you can turn that off and it'll go through and do the buckets. So this is XJ Crawler's wondering if this is GPU render. Yeah, this GPU is Redshift. So I have read and heard people say that Redshift will kick over to its to the CPUs if you don't have enough GPUs and there's a lot of textures. So I think that's why it's a little more stable and it can handle these larger scenes because it doesn't just rely on the GPU. It'll use a lot of the CPUs from what I understand. So yeah, I mean this takes a little bit of time to clean up, and it's because I keep moving the frame around. But I'll let this resolve a little bit so you guys can see. I mean, that's a lot of volumes. I have environment volumes in here. So I have a whole environment volume. I have the 3 other VDB files, which is a lot going on. And it does a great job. And I haven't even turned motion blur on. The motion blur in here is great too. Does a fantastic job. Maybe next week, guys, if you want to tune in, I'm going to talk about like motion blur because I discovered a couple things, and one of them was with particles. You can't see it in your IPR window. You have to render it in order to see your motion blur. So with particles, and I don't know if it was for other objects. I'll do some more research this week, and then we'll talk about motion blur next week. And we could even do motion vectors and show you how to use those in your compositing. So yeah, once this cleans up, it looks so good. So right now it doesn't, you have a lot of fireflies and stuff, but when this result, like when we have the final render, it will go through and get rid of all of these fireflies because it's a bias render, and it does a cheat. I had someone comment in the comments say, oh, you don't know the difference between bias and unbiased, and it's like, yes, I'm still learning, but what I do know is, yes, Redshift does kind of cheat. Octane is physically correct, but that means it's never going to resolve. It's never actually done rendering, because real world lights are always changing, and like it just never gets that final resolution. Really, you just kind of say, hey, stop here. Because this is bias, it says, hey, I'm going to set my samples to here, get there, but I want you to do like a cheat and clean up as much of this noise, or, you know, see relative pixels and see what I need to like clean up. And it cleans it up so much better. So in my experience, this does a far better job at cleaning up noise. Far, far better job. And if I fine tune my render settings, guarantee I could get it to go even faster than Octane as a final render. Because I've had, you know, Octane's awesome for previewing, but I've noticed it's a little slower, like the final render. I don't know if I do something wrong, but this is so much cleaner. So I guess you kind of gotta balance those things. I feel like I get the best of both worlds here in Redshift. So yeah, this has been a fun project I'm working on, and I was trying to get a render farm to render out all these frames because there's quite a bit going on. So is there any other questions before I call it? I'd love to answer questions. If not, thank you guys. Thank you for hanging out. Maybe we'll do motion blur with particles and objects, and even this is Forester. So if anyone wants to know what this plugin is that I'm doing all the trees, Forester, really, really awesome. Yeah. So thanks again for hanging out. Appreciate you guys. Leave comments. Let me know what you didn't like, what you liked. I want to try to do these once a week. I'm going to try to do every Thursday where we do live stream. We talk about VFX. We do a project or we do something. I would love to do live streams for about an hour once a week. Every Thursday is the goal. So tune in every Thursday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And yeah, thanks again, guys. Thanks for hanging out. And we'll see you later. Bye.